So we've all read the most recent Lookism chapter, and it's no question that Daniel's path is broken out of its mind. I think we can all come to an agreement that by far, when matched up against your everyday opponent, or anyone in general really, Daniel's path is gonna put him at an intrinsic advantage before the fight even starts, no matter who he's fighting. This same reaction and description can be applied to another Lookism character who also recently unlocked his path, that being Johan. Johan's path, the infinite technique, rightfully so, can also be called busted out of its mind, and against your everyday opponent, he walks into the fight already at an advantage. But what happens if Johan's everyday opponent just one day happened to be Daniel? The title isn't clickbait or view bait or anything. Under my current interpretation of both Johan and Daniel's paths, which is open to discussion in the comment section, I seriously think this matchup is underwhelmingly one-sided and not as unstoppable force versus immovable object-esque as we're making it out to be. If you have a different interpretation, again, I'm open to discussion in the comment section or wherever it may be, so hit me. I think the most important step in finding out who wins between Daniel and Johan is understanding how both of their paths fundamentally work and what paths even are in the first place, and there's no need for any tangents, so let's just get right into it. In the world of Lookism and Lookism strictly, paths are, in my opinion, the most unique thing a fighter can unlock that truly distinguishes them from the rest. A fighter's path is less briefly their path to the pinnacle. It is what distinguishes those close to the pinnacle, or in other words right below it, from those at the pinnacle or the actual pinnacles themselves. Senior manager Kim verifies this through his conversation with Eugene in chapter 510, where he says, "That's why the most powerful fighters at the peak of each generation to date have been people like Gaprion Kim or James. The strongest of each generation are always those who walk their own path, and as we know, both Gaprion and James have their own unique paths." But the reason I say paths, if you want to call them an ability, or the most unique ability a fighter can unlock, isn't just because they're unique to that one person, a Johan Seong original as Tom Lee calls Johan's path. It's because paths don't actually have to stem from a fighting context, which is what actually makes them unique. This is exemplified through Gun's path, which is his body, and in the most recent chapter, through Daniel's as well. It's about taking a trait unique to only you, or even an ability unique to only you, and improving upon it in a way that's also unique to you and only you. So for example, something like Mujin Jin's Assyrium isn't a path, because unlike Johan Seong's copy ability for example, which he turns into infinite technique by improving on every attack in his own distinct way, Mujin Jin's Assyrium simply takes Assyrium, a pre-established martial art, and turns it into a more brutal martial art that others can still use and can be taught. Seongji and Vinjin for example. So what we've established is that paths are unique to one person and one person only, but they also don't have to stem from fighting, which means to some, the unique trait or ability they improve on in their own distinct way doesn't have to be intrinsically related to fighting. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Gun's body isn't made strictly for fighting, for example, and Daniel's path is an example of this, as Gun explains in the most recent chapter, which we will get into shortly. Now that we've understood the concept of paths as a whole, we can actually make an attempt at understanding Johan's path, Daniel's path, and which of the two gives a bigger advantage when it comes to fighting and overpowers the other, because although both of them are extremely strong, there's a stark contrast between the two. Let's start with Johan's path, which he unlocks in his fight with Gun. Moving on from Manager Kim's speech about Johan walking his path to the pinnacle, in the next chapter, 511, Johan actually proceeds to unlock or awaken his path, and Gun gives us a detailed explanation of how Johan's path works, which is integral to this matchup. Upon Johan actually unlocking his path, he throws a punch at Gun, and Gun dodges a punch and asks Johan if he's using another move he's copied, implying he is, but then Gun gets virtually interrupted and hit right in the face by what looks to be an invisible attack to him. And no, not invisible attacks like the ones James Lee has, like an actual invisible attack. Gun is confused and he stands back up, and then Johan throws a kick, Gun ducks, and we see a trail of water following Johan's attack, and Gun tells Johan, he says, "I told you, your copy ability won't work on me." Again, Gun gets hit from an entirely different angle by another attack he literally could not see, and he comes to the realization he needed to come to in order for us to actually get our explanation. Gun says his attacks are a collection of various moves he's copied. Upon saying this, we see a panel of Johan having already thrown a punch, which is the punch Gun is able to see, but for some reason, there are 3 other strike arcs of punches he's already thrown, which Gun isn't able to see, all infused into one move. Johan then gets ready to throw another kick, and we see him lifting his leg up and chambering his knee, and Gun says, "A simple kick contains numerous strike arcs." When Gun says this, we see Johan throwing that same kick, but with it, there's a number of other strike arcs Gun is unable to see, resembling other kicks Johan is throwing at the same time he throws the one Gun is able to see, meaning when Johan actually throws a kick, he isn't just throwing one kick, he's throwing multiple kicks at once, which is explained as we move further throughout this fight. However, Gun is only able to see the strike arc of one of those kicks, the one he ends up dodging, and so Gun then says an unpredictable strike arc, created by endlessly consuming other fighters' moves and making them his own, a strike arc of infinity. When Gun says this, we see a panel of Johan standing in the air getting ready to throw any attack he really wants to throw, and behind every attack or every strike arc Gun is able to see, there are numerous other strike arcs Gun isn't able to see, representing other fighters' moves he's copied that are being thrown at the exact same time. Meaning, if Johan throws a punch, every punch he's ever copied from another fighter is thrown at the exact same time, with only one strike arc being visible to Gun and any other fighter Johan goes up against. Again, that doesn't mean these punches aren't being thrown yet, or he's waiting to throw them. That's just not how Johan's path works. The way Johan's path works is, he throws every punch at the exact same time, making for an infinite number of strike arcs, with only one being visible to Gun, as we see through the first and second attack Johan throws. They're all happening at once. Directly after this panel, Johan throws a number of different attacks, and Gun is absolutely overwhelmed and unable to dodge a single one as you'd expect. He says, this is Johan's Young's path. Let's take an example of a kick. Johan chambers his knee and is ready to throw a kick, and from that moment onwards, what Gun sees is Johan throwing a singular kick. But what actually happens is, as Gun explains, Johan incorporates every single kick he's ever copied and throws them all at once, each having its own unique strike arc, not visible to Gun or any other fighter. Now let's move to Daniel's path. In the latest chapter of Lookism, Daniel fights Peichon and gets thrown and cornered, and Peichon throws an attack in attempt to end the fight on the spot and take Daniel's life, but Daniel dodges the attack. Peichon is startled and he asks, how'd he dodge? He shouldn't have been able to react to that speed. He then says, what a shame. That one stroke of luck will only make it more painful for you. It's over now. He throws another attack of similar caliber and another and another and another, and Daniel dodges every single one, and he says, what on earth? He dodged them all? This is when we cut to Gun in his junkyard being visited by Charles Choi, and Charles asks Gun if he took Daniel in because of his eyes, and Gun says, eyes? You mean his copy ability. Being able to mimic what he sees is definitely an incredible talent, but that's not the reason I took him in. Charles asks, it's not? Gun explains by saying, I'd have just taken in some other guy if that was the reason. The copy ability just happened to be a part of him. His true value lies in his senses. He has a special sense for reading others' deepest intentions. I don't know whether it's an innate or learned sense, to be precise, but that sense is what allows him to use copy. In a fight, you can feel many things: air, smells, sounds, and so on. I took him in to maximize those senses of his. His vast experience in copying plus his maximized 5 senses will help him find his own path. Countless copying experiences, maximized 5 senses, that's right. He'll be able to read his opponent's strike path. Peichon goes on to throw numerous attacks at Daniel to no avail, as Peichon misses every single attack, and he says, it doesn't feel like he's dodging it. He's reading my strike path. Before we move to the latter part of this interaction and Gun's explanation, which is by far the more revealing part, let's break this first segment down. Daniel's path is an embodiment of the explanation I gave earlier regarding paths. They're unique not only because they're exclusive to one fighter and one fighter only, they're unique because they don't even have to stem from fighting in the first place. Gun in his explanation says Daniel has a special sense for reading others' deepest intentions. Nowhere is this made exclusive to fighting, rather simply reading other people's intentions, or in other words, what they mean to do rather than what they're actually doing. This is very likely a valid explanation as to why Daniel is able to speak to Jae Hong, for example, because even though Jae can't speak, he pretty clearly intends to communicate his thoughts, even through a phone call which is made directly for verbal communication, which Jae lacks, yet Daniel is still able to speak to Jae. His path stems from maximizing his 5 senses and his copy ability in order to turn this sense of reading people's deepest intentions from just an innate or learned sense he has into his actual path to the pinnacle when it comes to fighting. So what does this mean? Well, if we wanted to apply a simplified, watered down interpretation of Daniel Park's path, it'd be really easy for us to say, oh yeah, Daniel Park's path is just reading other people's strike path, dude. When not only is that not what's implied in the first place, but even if you somehow thought it was, it is just debunked directly after this. A more comprehensive understanding of Daniel's path would be Daniel reading his opponent's deepest intentions in the same way he would read Jae's when he speaks to him, for example. Lineman, when fighting Peichon, knows that Peichon is gonna throw an attack and that he should prepare to dodge if he isn't getting perception blitzed, and that is just about the extent of his knowledge. He doesn't know how or where Peichon wants to throw the attack, he doesn't know if Peichon intends to throw a fake, he doesn't know if Peichon intends to follow the attack up with another attack, he just knows Peichon is about to throw an attack. Daniel, on the other hand, knows just as much as Peichon when Peichon is throwing an attack. It's very, and I mean very similar to just downright mind reading. If Peichon intends to say throw an attack and direct it at his opponent's solar plexus, but halfway through turn it into a fake and elbow his opponent in the face when his opponent guards their solar plexus, and his opponent was lineman, for example, the attack would likely go as follows. Peichon throws the punch, lineman goes into guard assuming he's able to react, and gets elbowed right in the fucking face. If his opponent were to be Daniel, the attack would likely go as follows. Peichon throws the punch with the intent of throwing a fake and turning it into an elbow, and Daniel sees the strike arc of both the punch and the elbow that follows it, as Peichon assumes Daniel would go on guard and would simply move out of the way before Peichon even throws the elbow in the first place, so that by the time the elbow has been thrown, Daniel just isn't there, and it looks like Peichon is fighting Daniel's shadow, completely missing every punch he throws. Now, after dodging Peichon's numerous attacks in the chapter, we cut back to Gun talking to himself again. He says it's hard after all, and there's a distinction being made here between what Gun is saying out loud and what he's saying in his own mind. In his own internal monologue, he says, seeing your opponent's strike path in advance. It's a complete opposite of Johan Young's path, an unavoidable attack. So what he's saying is, if Daniel's path were to be restricted to just seeing his opponent's strike path, it would be the opposite of Johan's. Not only only is Johan and a counter to Johan's path still on his mind, but he then moves from an internal monologue to talking out loud, and this is the most integral part of this explanation. He says this: is it like seeing infinite movement paths? Before pausing and saying, however, for it to just be the opposite, Daniel Park's path should only let him dodge. But reading the opponent's deepest intentions also means reading their defense, so this is where the distinction is made between Johan and Daniel. Not only is Johan's path entirely offensive, whereas Daniel's path is offensive and defensive at the same time, because it stems from a seemingly innate sense he has to read people's intentions fighting wise or not, but it's heavily implied here and also just outright stated. Gunn is confirming to us readers that Daniel's path is the counter to Johan's path that Gunn was trying to find. He ponders to himself, saying, is it like seeing infinite movement paths? That isn't put there to mislead us, it's there to guide us in understanding what would happen if Johan were to throw an attack at Daniel. Again, going back to Johan's path, Johan throws an attack with only one strike arc being visible to his opponent. However, the visible strike arc is not the only active strike arc, as there exists, as is verbatim stated, numerous other strike arcs, not visible to his opponent, being thrown as an amalgamation of moves Johan's copied from other fighters in his life, just a perfect combination of talent and experience at the same exact time. So what Johan is doing is, he's throwing multiple attacks at once, multiple movement paths, with only one of the attacks actually showing, because if none were to show, then Johan's body would just go invisible, and Gunn envisions this in his mind and thinks, what if Johan were to do that against Daniel? Johan throws this attack, I can only see one of the moves, but he throws every single move at the same time, so when I dodge the attack I can see, it's not like I'm not gonna get hit, I'm still gonna get hit regardless of whether I dodge the strike arc visible to me or not, because wherever I go there's another strike arc not visible to me, however still there because Johan threw all of the attacks at once, ready to greet me and make it so that Johan actually ends up hitting me. But what if it were to be Daniel? I don't know as much as Johan does, so I can't see the strike arcs he's throwing, I can only see one of them, but for Daniel, one who's able to read the deepest intentions of the opponents he fights, to him, is it like seeing infinite movement paths? Oh wait, I forgot, it doesn't matter regardless, because his path is not just a counter to Johan's, he also reads Johan's defense, meaning Johan has no defense against Daniel's attacks, meaning there's no opponent who's a match for him. That's my attempt at a walkthrough of Gunn's thought process throughout that whole exchange. In my personal opinion, Daniel's path would and is implied to give Daniel the ability to read every single one of Johan Young's invisible strike paths. In my personal opinion, Daniel's path is just a direct counter to Johan's. I'd also like to point out how the greatest outcome for Johan in this fight would be a stalemate, where Daniel is supposedly unable to read Johan's strike paths and is therefore getting hit every single time by Johan, and Johan is also getting hit every single time by Daniel because Daniel can read his defense. Meanwhile, that's the worst outcome for Daniel, because if, and I believe this to be the case, Daniel was able to read Johan's strike paths, he would not only be able to dodge every single one of his moves, he would also be able to hit Johan every single time he throws an attack, meaning he would utterly dominate him. This should apply to most opponents Daniel fights, and I think this is probably why Gunn says what he says at the end of the chapter. However, I wouldn't be surprised if PTJ ends up making Peichon somehow find a counter to Daniel's path next chapter for the sake of Gu Kim, although I think the more likely ending is Daniel just passing out the same way Johan does against Gunn after unlocking his path. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Be sure to give me your perspective down in the comments below, and I'm out.